All the Philadelphia Flyers talk you need. Flyera gonna Flyera starts now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our 23rd installment of Flyera Gonna Flyera. We got a good one for you this week. We're going to be going over a lot of stuff. We'll be going over last week's game, talk about the World Junior Championships and the Flyers that did indeed make it, and one that should have, in all of our opinions. There's been a little bit of an update on the goaltender carousel that the Flyers had. We're going to jump into that a little bit later and even talk about the potential chances of the Flyers maybe even sneaking into the playoffs. It's been an interesting run over these last few weeks. But before all that, let me introduce you to my two gracious co-hosts, starting with the man right above me, Mr. Eric Martino. Eric, how you doing today?
Very good, Alex. Another week, another Flyers week, another week of hockey, and here we go.
And away we go indeed. And the man to my left, the old vet, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jamey Bascow.
Aloha mahalo, everybody. I'll tell you, I'm fired up for this show, and you'll find out why. That's for sure. I'm ready to bring pitchforks to Habland. That's what's going on.
Jamey's got another good rant for us. Sorry to cut that off. But, yeah, this is going to be a good one. You're going to want to listen to this. But let's jump right into it. Flyers had 4 games last week. We all gave our predictions. Ended up being a 2-2 week. It was a lost sandwich with wins in the middle. So we're going to go game by game, give our feedback on each of these games, starting with the game on Utah. So with that being said, Jamey, let you lead this off. Give us your opinion on that Utah game.
I saw two teams. I agree with Torts. There wasn't much energy from either team. It was teams faced off, back-to-backs. Both teams. Utah, that was their second on the East Coast there. So I really thought the Flyers would take it to them, even though the Flyers were on a back-to-back, and it didn't happen. They just fell flat. They lost, 4-2? And, they just looked very flat. Utah looked very flat. It was like until the third period where the action started to get going there a little bit. But it was just a lackluster game. You just saw, I don't know what it was, really tired legs, really from both teams, to be honest.
It is intro. Did we lose Mr. Bascow there for a second?
Coming off what was it? A loss to the Boston Bruins there. I thought that they would rally behind that loss because I actually think the Flyers played very well against Boston, but they fell flat in the end there. But I just thought it was lack of energy. It was just one that I wouldn't dial in. I just say, hey, send off. Let's not even watch the tape.
Yeah. I'm going to double down on that a little bit. It really did kind of, especially for the circumstances that they came into. Both teams were coming off of a back-to-back. Both had Saturday matinees before a Sunday night showdown at 7 p.m. So they actually did have a little more rest than you usually have off of a back-to-back. But both teams just didn't really show up, especially in that first period. It was a pretty lackluster period. There weren't really many high-quality bids. Second period, goals start getting traded off. But it was 3-2 after 2. After some back and forth hockey, after the legs finally got under both of these teams a little bit. In the third period, the real game changer of this game was the Jamey Drysdale goal that got called back. He ripped one from the point that looked like a clean goal at first, but then once we got into the nitty-gritty of things, Konechny was in the crease. Yeah, there was some contact. I wasn't too much of an uproar about this call because we need some level of consistency when it comes to goaltender interference. And then there's been some calls that have benefited the Flyers in that case this year, of players being in the crease with some contact. So if that's the case, I kind of get this. But they never really found their legs after that. They were very lackluster. They were kind of just going through the motions. They couldn't get that bid. And then the giant Morgan Frost whiff in the final 5 minutes where he pulled his breast impersonation of Brad Marchand and forgot the puck. And then 5 seconds later, it ends up in the back of the net. And Kolosov really couldn't do much about that one. So definitely going to not be on Morgan Frost's highlight reel anytime soon, that whiff. But Yeah, they not the greatest game. Eric, anything to add?
Yeah, no, pretty much. Same thoughts, basically, like both you guys. Even with like the goalie interference. Look, I think the NHL really has to come out with something where it really it explains exactly what goalie interference is. Because look, I saw it and automatically I figured it was gonna come back the way they've been calling it this year. But
Oh
my
yeah.
only concern is the way they're calling it this year. It seems like they're going back to like pre 2000s with the foot in the crease.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like you cannot be in the even it like Konechny barely even made any contact with the goalie, and he was literally at the edge of the crease, and they called it back. And look, even Boucher was saying it on the broadcast. He was explaining why they were going to call it back, and the way his explanation, the way he was talking, the way he was talking about it, it just sounded like foot in the crease again. It's like we're going back to the 90s, 80s, whatever. So I think the NHL really has to clarify what exactly goalie interference is. Because if you really impede if you're a little bit in the crease, but you don't really impede the goalie from making a save, then why is that goalie interference?
Yeah.
We're just calling again foot in the crease. So I think the NHL just has to do a better job clarifying that. And as a whole, that game, I was a little disappointed, especially like you guys said after that Boston and Florida game. I thought they were gonna come out like on fire with passion, like kind of like stick it to the NHL, stick it to the refs, you know, like. And they came out kind of flat, I found, and I like Jamey said, this is one of those games that you just put in your rearview mirror and you forget about it.
It's funny you mentioned that about the goalie interference too, and I've kind of thought about the same thing. This kind of reminds me of the late '90s. I remember a series back in, I think it was '98, when the Bruins played the Capitals, and they had a game-winning goal scored that got called back in the playoffs. I think it was Game 6 of the '98 quarterfinals. No one probably remembers this, but there was a game-winning goal scored by Boston that got called back because of something very similar, just skate in the crease, minimal to no contact. And Washington ends up winning the game off of that. That's the most infamous goal I can think of in that instance. But yeah, this is just it does feel like you need some level of consistency, and it looks like this year that has been the pretty much the way they've been going by this is just foot in the crease, we're waving it back, contact. Even if you breathe on the goalie, it's getting called back. Come out and tell us that. Say, hey, this is what we are going to be calling for goalie interference, not just this year, from here on out. At least so we can get that pretty much, at least in writing or solidified or just stated that we have something to go by. Because there's still levels of inconsistency with this rule that drive us crazy. Overall, this year, I don't think it's been terrible, but it's weird that it does feel like they are going back to late 90s, early 2000s hockey with the rule.
You just don't know what's a goal and what's not. It's like football, right? You just don't know what's a catch and what isn't anymore. I think there's a lot of variables in all sports. It's like, with the exception for like soccer, maybe that like the only thing in soccer is like, is that a red card or a yellow card? And you could go like either way. But like, in terms of like football aspects, you just don't know. And to me, that's sort of wrong. Although I'm not arguably upset over the call like Joel Farabee was, but I think Farabee is a little confused too, and I think that's some of the frustration afterwards was that they don't know what's a call. So I understand why Joel would be mad because, and not Torts. Torts is a coach, so Torts is gonna, okay, well he touched him, and that's it. Whereas Joel's like, okay, well other times we touched, and it was a goal, so it was ruled a goal. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why Joel was a little frustrated speaking for his teammates. And I think that's what a leader does, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it just goes back to things. I'm glad, Joel stood up there and stood up for his team, saying, hey, listen, I don't think that should have been waved off. I don't think TK made more than enough contact. But it is about standing up for one another and standing up for your team. It kind of felt similar to what happened in that Florida game a few days prior.
Yeah.
Where that board
exactly.
really jumped in for Sanheim.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, let's move on to the next game. Tuesday, they had a game against Columbus, and in my opinion, this may have been arguably their best game of the year. Maybe not their best, but it's that or that Buffalo game a few weeks prior. But they came out the way we expected them to come out in the Utah game. They dominated pace. They completely controlled the aspect of things. They jumped out to an early lead, 2 goals, a weird one off of a weird bounce by Cates that he just put it in pretty much 2 inches away. And then an Owen Tippett snipe. Oh, that was a beauty. Late in the first period to put the boys up 2-0. But, at the same time, we were looking at this second period. What's to come? Are they going to falter? Is Columbus going to start fighting back? They didn't let that foot off the throttle. Konechny, actually not Konechny, I'm sorry. No, it was. Konechny sniped one to make it 3-0 on the power play. 2 further after. Then Columbus answered back with that Werenski goal on the power play of their own, and you're thinking, oh, here we go. Here comes the part where Columbus makes that push, second period Blues yet again. But you never really felt it because they answered almost instantly back with that Konechny breakaway. Jumped out 4-1, and from there, Columbus just felt like that was the morale killer. They just looked flat the rest of the game. They got some late ones to make it close, and the score actually showed in the third. But the Flyers finally didn't falter to their second period demons, I think is a better way to put it. Frostberry won in the third to make it a 4-goal game before, as I just stated, Columbus made it a little closer than it actually was. But they kept their foot on the throttle, and I felt like they played a borderline full 60 minutes. That or that Buffalo game, I think, was the best game they played all year. They were strong. They were bringing it to Columbus. They outshot them. They outqualitied them. Their scoring chances were better. They were suffocating the Blue Jackets, who, again, also kind of looked flat as well. So I guess you can call it a mixture of the two. But the Flyers did great. They were consistently in the offensive end, peppering them with chances. Eric, let me throw this one to you. What did you think?
Well, look, the Flyers they caught a tired Columbus team also. They just came back from the Western Canada trip where they literally played every team in Western Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So look, they caught a tired team, and they dominated 100%. There's nothing else I could say. The only thing that was really concerning for me was that late push by Columbus towards the end of the game. Yeah. And look, I'm going to lump it again with the next game against Detroit. Again, I thought the first couple periods, even a bit into the third, the Flyers, same thing, dominated Detroit. But then Detroit gets that late push at the end, and it's it looked like we might blow this game. And I find this has been an issue of late, but the past couple weeks, if not more, where it's we have these leads and we blow it. And now look, we played 2 bottom teams, so we ended up keeping the leads. But you look at the Florida game, or I think it was at Vegas also, where we had leads and we're blowing these leads. So I think that's an issue that has to be addressed because, again, I think I've said it before on this on the pod is we're still a team learning how to win. So this is it. We have to learn how to close games out. And I think these 2 games were a perfect example of that. Because look, man, I'll talk about the Detroit game now too. Cam Talbot played amazing. We could have easily been up 4 or 5 goals in that game. He was amazing. But look, you're gonna face hot goalies every once in a while, So, and look, congrats, thumbs up to Alexei Kovalosov because at 2-1 when he made that glove save, that was it. The game was right there. That would have been a tie game, and the way the Flyers were playing late in the third, I don't even know if that game would have went to overtime. We might even have lost that game.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So that's it. I think what these 2 games showed me is, again, we see how we can play and how we can be dominant, but we have to learn how to close games out. Okay, there's a lot of chatter there Danny Briere can't close on trades. Well, the Flyers got to learn how to fucking close on games. That's the way it is.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, it's hard to disagree with Eric there. I mean, he just spoke on everything, and you got to agree. I mean, this is just getting frustrating. That's the big part of the Flyers' problem right now is that they do not know how to close games out. And you would think with so much success they've had lately with having leads and stuff, they should build on it and become better at closing games. And yet you still see them that they rely on the goaltending to bail them out. Sam Ersson Tuesday night. If Sam doesn't make some high quality saves against the Blue Jackets in real, man, you're looking from 3-1 to 3-2. Thankfully, like Alex said earlier, TK with that breakaway sort of iced it and it deflated the Columbus Blue Jackets throttle there a little bit. But if Ersson doesn't make one of those 2 key saves, you're looking at 3-2, and it's an entirely different game. Now they got the jam and energy. So I think the goaltending bailed them out a little bit there, but the goaltending definitely bailed them out, against a Detroit team. And let's say this, they're really not that bad of teams, because Columbus, they got Cole Sillinger back. They were reeling, without Cole. Now they get Cole back, and they're only 2 points behind the Flyers in the standings there, so they're not that. They are, losing Johnny Hockey, Lord rest his soul. Just imagine what that team would be if Johnny Hockey were alive. They could, maybe be even ahead of the Flyers right now with the way they've been playing. So in the Detroit, you would think that, man, they're based off of what they did last year. You're thinking, oh, okay, they're going to, be in the middle of the pack this year in the standings, and they haven't. They've sort of fell flat a little bit, but they're still very, very talented over there. They got Lucas Raymond, who could score from anywhere, and Cam Talbot played, like Eric said, played out of his mind. It was just one of those games I felt, can we beat Cam? It was, like the Flyers played so well against Detroit. They were dominating them for literally 2.5 periods. And then all of a sudden, like Eric said, with the last 8-7 minutes there, they pop one, and you're like, oh, okay. And then they really took it to them, get a power play, and it was lackluster. It's like, oh, okay, they play better at 5-on-5 than with the man advantage. They were taking it to the Flyers. They get the man advantage, they can't do nothing. But that's what I liked, was the PK really became a force there for the Flyers. And Alexei Kolosov, you need your best penalty killer. And Coley, like Eric said, man, made that phenomenal glove hand save. Really solidified, yes, I'm an NHL quality starter in this league. Yes, and I said that. And his ceiling is an NHL starter in this league. I've never seen we haven't seen this since Sergei Bobrovsky, a goaltender that could go post to post as fast as Alexei Kolosov can. And I think that was intriguing when you're watching him at KHL. He was doing the same thing, moving post to post so darn quickly. Man, I'm really happy Danny made it work. That's for sure. That's my big takeaway.
I'm going to go a little deeper into Alexei Kolosov when we talk about the goaltending situations here, because he was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely agree with you, Jamey. Those last 7-8 minutes he made, that glove save was ridiculous. The glove save, that was maybe the Flyers save of the year. He timed it perfectly. And, it's what's so underrated about that is he was not peppered that much in those first 2.5 periods. You could have potentially thought, oh, he might be a little rusty. He's not in much of a groove. Making a save like that when you're not getting peppered to the degree that you are is the most underrated thing about that, because you're keeping yourself sharp, not just physically, but mentally as well for that. But yeah, as you mentioned with that Detroit game, they completely dominated pace of play for the first 50 minutes. I remember looking, shots at one point, I believe, were 28-11 Flyers. They were completely dominated. It was like 75% of that game felt like it was in the Flyers' offensive zone. It's just Cam Talbot was standing on his head. And of course, it's the Flyers' lot. They get every mediocre goalie that they can play to stand on their head. Mm-hmm. Cam was playing great. All the respect to him. But there was one Flyer he could not solve tonight, and that was Scott Laughton. Well, that game. Now, mind you, 2 of them were empty netters, so I don't want to go over the top. But Lots, he had that absolute clap bomb. Oh, my God, I wish I did record that one. I'm going to have a few clips for next week's episode. But that clap bomb by Laughton was what Heat Daddy would like to call rock star shit, because he absolutely launched that to put the Flyers up 1-0. Then the shorthanded bid, the Flyers kind of found their aggressive shorthanded play from last year with a power play was more the power kill, and the TK Lots connection struck to make it 2-0. And it felt like at that point the game was put away. But Detroit came with a high octane blast in those last 7-8 minutes to make us sweat a little bit. And Kolosov was fantastic. He was sharp. He made big saves when he needed to. The one goal he allowed, I wouldn't say was his fault. It was a weird redirection that went over his shoulder. So he looks really good. And we talked about last week of what the Flyers should do with the goaltending. Take a look if you want to look at last week's episode, goaltending carousel. We mentioned, where they should go from here. They got 3 goalies. Are they going to run this short term, long term? Who's going to be where? They're going to have some decisions to make soon, especially as you mentioned to us privately, Jamey, when Nick Delorier comes back.
Yeah.
I originally thought that Kolosov should be going back to the AHL and just working on his craft and be ready to be a full-time guy next year. But, Torts doesn't see it that way. We'll go a little more in depth about that shortly. But I got to give it a Scott Lott, a 4-goal game. That's awesome. That's so awesome. I'm so happy with the dude. This is a dude that's been in here since 2012, and to just have a performance like that where everyone can appreciate, I love it for Lots. The dude deserved it. Final game yesterday, Flyers played the Wild, and this one was kind of interesting. Eric, let me let you lead this one off since we both had a game to start with.
Well, look, I wasn't able to watch this game because these Saturday afternoon games are killing me there because my kids both have hockey and my daughter had a game.
The struggle.
So the struggle's real. The struggle's real. And but no, look, I went over the game. I watched the highlights. And it seems like it was like a pretty even game, like all stats considered. And just that the only battle that we really lost was the scoring battle. And look, it really sucks. It seemed like it could have been a winnable game, but one thing I've noticed though, and Michkov's done it a lot too, and I find it's starting to become a trend in the league is those shots from those off angle shots trying to bank it off the goalie's face mask. Yeah. It's
Kaprizov did it. Yes,
exactly. Michkov has done it a couple times too, and he's tried it a bunch more times, and that's kind of cool. It's just one little take I got from watching
side angle, side angle. Yeah, I like it. Never, because you never know.
Where the goalie's hole, and it's just try to bank it off the side of the head and make it go in, or I don't know how that's gonna work with goalies and concussions trying to just nail the goalie in the head every time, but look, that's pretty much what I took from that game, and the only other thing I took is please is a little maybe what's that I'm looking for? So plea maybe to Bill Guerin. Can you please treat us Marco Rossi? that'd be really nice. I'd appreciate it. And that's it.
Jamey, how about your takes?
Yeah, I thought the Flyers played very, very well. What this game was telling to me is that the Flyers need more. I think that people can see it. They go in stretches to where this team's really good, but they obviously need more. They need more talent, and that's what that game showed me is that the more talented team overtook and was able to withstand and took it to the lesser talented team eventually because they just stuck with it. The Flyers stuck with their game plan. When they play these top tier teams, they play very well against, and then they come away with 0 points or 1 point. It's oh, okay. They just need that one, at least one more, probably two players, but they need at least one more player to try to get them over the top. And not saying that they become an instant contender, but they would, okay, this solidifies us as a playoff contending team now. Not a contender. That it's a little different. I'm not saying that they would instantly become a contender, but a playoff contending team, meaning, okay, they should be able to make the playoffs now because I still see them as a bubble borderline playoff team right now. And that's what that game showed me. When you're playing these top teams, these top 8 teams, especially when the nitty gritty gets tough, towards the tail end of the season there, that's when the points become harder to get. And I just don't see them having enough to garner that 2 points. They get the 1 point, but not the 2 points. Does that make sense? And that 1 point could be very valuable for latter in the future. And I think that's what that game showed me. They played so well. The goaltending was there. Sam Ersson was on. He played very well, stuck there. But they need more than Michkov. And I think to go back to what Eric just said, I wonder if that's coaching there. Like John Tortorella, how he has his weekly meetings once a week with Michkov. Hey, just throw it on net because you're so they're like the goalies you can catch sleeping or catch relaxing. I wonder if that's a bit of coaching there to just throw the puck on net from the side and see what happens. Be able to bank one off the helmet. Be able to bank one off the shoulder pad. Be able to bank one off the back of the pad because he's doing that a lot lately, where he's just flicking the puck on net and seeing what happens. Is that him or is coaching? That's a good one to ask next week.
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of what you had to say, Jamey, and you too, Eric. Especially pace of play, this game felt like an evenly paced game. Offensively, they got their opportunities. They ran into a hot goalie. Marc-Andre Fleury looked like he found the time machine back to 2009. He made some big saves, especially in those first two periods. That pretty much that diving save he made on Konechny in the first period where he absolutely robbed him. That's a save of the year candidate. That was absolutely lunacy. That pass from Farabee to Konechny. Konechny's got 90% of the net wide open. He shoots the puck in the one spot his glove ends up being. That was a phenomenal 10-bell save by Fleury in the first. And I felt like that kind of zapped a little bit of the juice the Flyers had, because in that first period, I felt like the first 10 minutes, they kind of outplayed the Wild. They were getting the better of chances. They were getting their opportunities. They didn't score in the first. Neither team did. Second period jumps in. Actually, I lied. No, Kaprizov did score in the first. I apologize. That's when he pretty much did what we just mentioned about Michkov. He shot the puck off the back of Hurst's head and it went in the net. Well-played shot. I can't even get mad at that. That was just an elite player doing elite things. Kaprizov, in my opinion, currently is the heart leader. But argument for another day. Second period comes along. Flyers again got some chances. Konechny again has an empty net to shoot at, and accidentally got shot at Matvei Michkov's stick, and it didn't go in. Oh, I saw that one, man. I had to watch that 3 times. I was like, did Michkov accidentally just prevent a goal of Konechny's? Oh, but those are 2 goals right there that they should have had that got taken off the board. This game could have easily been 3-3 going to overtime, and we'll see what happens. But unfortunately, it wasn't. Wild jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the second, and then a 3-0 lead in the third. They kind of really started finding their game a bit in the third. The Flyers didn't have that spark they usually have in the third. Sanheim did pop one late with about 5 to play, but they just didn't. That second goal, actually more the third, but I'd say the second to third goal margin was where the deflation really kicked in, where you have an elite team like this who plays with so much talent. Brock Faber is one of my favorite young players coming up in the league. Marco Rossi, as Eric mentioned, I'd love to have him here. I think this kid has #1 center written all over him. Eric Sinek is one of the most underrated players in the game, in my opinion. He's a really good player there. So, I look at the Wild and just the situation there, and this is a high-quality team. This is a top-5 team. And you went, play for play with them. You played pretty well. But on the scoreboard, it looks worse than it actually was. I got to agree with Jamey. I do think this team needs more finishers. I think, as we have mentioned and hammered down a million times, in the center. Husbands just got named available. We'll see what happens there. Well, the team's been calling about him, but not to go too off track. This team, they played a good game. In terms of effort and pace of play, I am not mad about how they played. I like what Urson said, too. He felt like he said he needed to make a couple more saves. And, even though I don't really blame him too much for this game, I looked at all 3 goals. I don't really have a particular goal that I can look at and say, Urson should have made that save. I think it was just more that the Flyers could not capitalize on their opportunities in this game. They had chances, but they just couldn't finish. And Talbot was great. There was another big, too. Remember, they had the left side of the net wide open, too, in a free play. They tried doing a cross-creaser to Sanheim, and he just couldn't get a stick on. It was a wide open net. And that just seemed like the theme all day. They just couldn't finish, and that's where your point comes in, Jamey. They need to get more finishers. They need 1 or 2 more guys in this top 6 that you can really look at a consistent basis and say these guys can finish. Obviously you have Konechny and Michkov, all reliables. Tippett's starting to find his game a little bit. I think, I don't expect a 4-goal game from Lawton every game, but, it's always good to have bottom 6 scoring like that. But they need some real help down the middle. That's where this ends. Anything else before we move on?
Yeah, like you talk about help down the middle. Names that you threw out there, I love them. One guy that might be on the market now is Shane Pinto. I'd make a run.
Pinto would be nice. I think he'd fit at least a 2C spot very well, and you can at least roll with him. We'll see what happens there. I do have a weird suspicion this is not going to be the final roster come March. I do think they're going to end up adding a player. I think Danny did what he did last year to sell Sean Walker and keep Lott and give this team a chance to push for the playoffs. And, we're seeing this year, I don't think it's a fluke. I think they're at least going to be on the bubble. Maybe Danny looks at it and says, I got plenty of assets to work in this year's draft. We'll see what happens.
He's such a heck of a guy, man. He's such a heck of a guy in that locker room, man. Lott's the classiest guy you'd ever meet. I was so happy for that 4-goal game for him because he's one of the most deserving players throughout the league. Just the way he acts, not only with his players, but the media. He's phenomenal. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
You know, he does a lot of stuff off the ice, too. So that's why I give you the 4 Sarge salute.
I love it.
Or
I
Sarge
love that.
salute. That's why we named this episode that, because
Well deserved, too. Well deserved.
And you know what? We were talking about, like, before, when we were talking about, like, going back to the 90s, man. That goal he scored, that was pure 90s. I loved it so much. Going down the wing, slap it. And, I
haven't seen anyone pull a clap bomb like that here.
It's freaking awesome. It's great. I loved it. I loved every second, man. Hold your beer, because beer was everywhere.
Oh, my God. That water bottle spilled. You know it. But anyway, let's move on. So the World Junior rosters got mentioned. We're going to go over this a little bit, not too deep into it, but the World Junior rosters got announced. Flyers have 3 representatives. Some of us argue maybe it should be 4, but besides the point. Jet Luchenko, their first-round pick this year. Oliver Bonk, their second first-round pick in 2023. And Carson Bjornstrom, who is looking like another one of the Flyers' many goaltenders they have in the prospect.
Yeah.
That looks like they could become a player, also was named. One name that was notably left off the list that we're a little frustrated about. His name is Denver Barkey. Well, he was their 3rd-round pick in, I believe, 2022, I want to say. I believe it was 2022 they drafted him. And I was shocked. I think we all were. So, Jamey, you are the man who seems like he's the most emotional about this. So I'm going to let you lead this off. What's your opinion on all this?
Oh, I'm pissed. I just don't understand. You got to be out of your mind if you're selecting a Luca Pinelli, who I'm not saying isn't deserving, over Denver Barkey. Luca Pinelli plays for the Ottawa, 67s. And the head coach, arguably, right, ironically enough, is the head coach of Team Canada for WJC, so he selects his guy over Denver Barkey, the last player that should have been selected. It was unbelievable. I just don't understand. I mean, Barkey has almost doubled his numbers. They're both captains, for their team, so the leadership stuff goes out the window. That I understand. But Barkey should have made this club over Luca Pinelli, so they select the glue guy. Over a Barkey who's a point producer. Like it boggled my mind, the justification to select Luca Pinelli over Denver Barkey. It blows my mind. Barkey was on that, he was at camp last year, arguably rightfully got cut. There was a lot more he needed to work on. And Team Canada stocked. And I don't care if Seneke made the team or missed the team. I don't care if I always mispronounce. I'm really bad with names. I'm surprised I know Luca Pinelli. I said that correctly. But I don't care who made or miss. I don't care if it's a 1st-round pick. I don't care if the person is a 7th-round pick. Picks should go out the window. You select the best players available. I just don't understand how you miss and justify Luca Pinelli over Denver Barkey. They're both the same players, and you're putting up in comparison a glue guy who Barkey's a glue guy for arguably so for the London Knights, who were on a 19-game winning streak prior. I just don't get it. And it boggles my mind. And man, Team USA, if Barkey was able to go to Team USA, they would select him in a heartbeat. Select him. And I know that the talent is there. It's harder to make Team Canada. Obviously, they have their talent pool is just insane. But he should have made it over Luca Pinelli.
Can I give an opinion that I just formed while I was hearing you talk?
Let's hear it.
As you said, if Pinelli is a glue guy, Canada's loaded with talent, with scoring, with everything. Maybe they felt they needed to add a glue guy at that spot because they wanted to have a more well-rounded team, I guess. But Canada usually is a loaded club offensively and even defensively, right? So I think that might be why.
Now you're going to have fans select and be glued with pitchforks at the bell. So you know what I mean? I know you're the Hab guru, man, but I understand what you say.
I'm Canadian. Hey, listen, if it takes pitchforks to beat you guys, I'm good.
Get this guy out of here.
Where'd he come from?
Eric, let me hear your take. It's the Team Canada shirt.
Yeah, gotta represent a little bit first. Oh,
Simone Gagne, so we love it.
Simone Gagne.
Hey, I love it. I love it. All the respect to Team Canada too. All the respect though.
Same thing. Look, with Barkey, I was a little disappointed. Like, I kind of, because if you look at the lineup, I kind of understand, because if you're gonna have a guy, if Barkey's gonna play on your team, it's gonna be in the top 9 at the very least. And if you look at Canada's top 9 right now for the World Juniors, it's incredible. So but like Jamey, like Luca Pinelli made it as an extra, and I could have seen easily Denver Barkey make it as an extra or like an injury replacement, something like that. Which, like, look, at the end of the day, the guy's team captain for one of the best teams in the OHL, and so like that's not for anything. That's a big honor, especially like in Canadian juniors. And like having, so it shows he is. And look at what they did since he was named captain, the London Knights, and just having like his leadership, and even things that you heard from the Flyers, like how he's a good kid, and he's vocal, and like something like that should be something that Canada should use. And like I really feel bad for the kid, because he was one of the final cuts last year, got cut again this year. So like maybe he'll have, I think, one last chance next year. But anyway, I feel really bad for him. But look, the Flyers got three players on Team Canada: Bjornsson, Bonk, and Luchenko. So like I'm super happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, Jack Berglund made Team Sweden, so that's an added plus. So we actually have 4. The only I tried to look for Finland's roster. That's the one roster I couldn't find, because I wasn't sure if Ruhonen would have made it or not. But that's, so possibly maybe the Flyers could have 5 prospects in the tournament. So, but yeah, no, look, really happy for the guys, and a couple guys that I'm gonna keep my eye on, because we were talking before, like last week, about like trade candidates. And there's a couple like decent just on Team Canada, but like you have Carson Rekoff that I've talked about before, and like even Brendan Yeager, like guys like that, guys that play center, and that the Flyers could be like targeting for a possible trade to bring in like a young center. So I'm going to be really excited to watch the tournament.
Wouldn't that be ironic if they brought in Brandon Yeager, who was originally drafted by the Penguins over here just a year or 2 later?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be sweet poetic justice, because that's looking like a mistake for Pittsburgh again.
Right now, yeah. It's looking like a mistake of a trade.
But anyway, looking at this, let me start by congratulating the 3 that did make it. Jet Luchenko. Hey, Zach Perea. 13 overall made it. Did you? Nope. Wow, that's crazy. I wanted to throw that in. Because he threw that little barb out at Jet Luchenko going 13 overall. Hey, Zach Perea. But, all seriousness, it's probably a talented player. It's just don't come after my players. Don't expect pushback. All Bonk, awesome. Happy to see him, number 1 defenseman on that London Knights team. He's going to be a stud for a long time, I think.
He's phenomenal.
I think he'll end up being here in the next year or 2. We'll see. And Carson Bjornstrom, as I mentioned, this team's goaltending pool is ridiculous. And he just looks like another kid that's going to really push for a spot between him, Safaragin, what you already have, and potentially Alexei Kolosov, Erskine already being here. This, as I always mention, ABDG. Always be drafting goalies. This is why. It's always great to have a pool like that. But Denver Barkey, a guy who's on pace for almost 70 assists this year on a London Knights team, as Jamey mentioned, that has won 19 games in a row at one point. It's astonishing, like, that he didn't make this roster. I think he's not quite as high of a pace as he was last year. I think he put up a little over 100 points last year. I think he's at about an 80-something point pace at the moment. But the fact that he didn't make it is mind-boggling. He is one of the better playmakers on that team, or he would be at least. And he's a smart kid. I think he's going to have a real potential to be a legitimate middle 6 guy in the NHL when he makes the show. So, I don't know. I was quite surprised by that. But, maybe they wanted a glue guy, as Rick mentioned. Who knows? I was just flabbergasted. I think this kid is more than deserving. His playmaking abilities are excellent. He's a really smart kid. And, he's one of those kids that he's a third round pick. He's one of those kids that you look at and is like, he is pretty much beat the odds again and again and again. All you're going to do is light a fire under his ass doing this. So Who knows? Maybe in the long run, it'll light a fire under his ass more, where he shows it more when it push comes to shove, when he's ready to make the show in, say, like 2026, 27. But Denver Barkey not making it was, as you mentioned, quite shocking to me. Anyone else have anything else to add before we move on?
Yeah, I wanted to say, again, in the point per game pace on the pace for points in terms of Denver Barkey, both him and Oliver Bonk were late cuts at Flyers camps, for good reason. So they were late cuts. I know he was, recovering from mono, at that particular time. And Oliver Bonk, they were given every shot, to try to make the roster out right. And so that hindered, and then coming back, he didn't score, register a point for the first like 2 or 3 games, after coming back from camp. So yeah, that's going to hurt his 100-point total this year for sure. But he did eclipse the 200-point mark as a member of a London Knight, and I think only 4 Knights have ever done that.
Yeah, that's crazy. The fact that they didn't put that into consideration. But I think this kid's always had an underdog mentality his entire career. I think in the long run, it's just gonna pretty much light a fire under his ass more than it already has.
Yeah, agreed.
Eric, anything else before we move on?
Oh, no, I think I said what I had to say.
All right. With that being said, let's move on to the goaltending talk. So last week's episode was called Goaltending Carousel, Flyer 22. If you haven't had the chance to look at it, take a look. We talked about where this team could be going with their goalies from here on out. And they got a bit of a decision to make, especially when Nick Delorier comes out. When we got it back, we got a little bit of an update. Alexei Kolosov has been named the number 2 goaltender, and our friend Ivan Fedotov is number 3. Now, all 3 is still on the roster right now. Obviously, Urs is still considered the 1. So I'd like to thank everyone's feedback on this. Eric, let me let you start. What was your initial reaction to this? And do you agree or disagree?
Well, I can't say I was super surprised because, especially like after that Florida game, I think we talked about it last week, when Torts pulled Fedotov after the first period when he let in 2 goals, you kind of saw the writing on the wall there because honestly, I didn't agree with that. Like I said last week, I didn't agree with that pulling. I didn't understand why you was only like, look, it's only 2 goals with them, but at the end of the day, like I didn't think he was playing that terribly to be pulled. So when it came out this week that Torella basically said, yeah, Kolosov's our 2. We talked with Fedotov and we explained him the situation. So that's why I wasn't really surprised after seeing what we saw against Florida. And look, to be totally honest with you, like 100%, I think Kolosov is the more skilled goalie. Obviously, has the most potential and all that. But at the end of the day, like he's still only 22 years old, and like he still needs to work on a couple things. So I think the best course of action for him would be to go back to Lehigh Valley and just ride Fedotov as your backup goalie because he hasn't played that badly, Fedotov, that to say like no, like this guy should be cast to the sun or something. So honestly, I think that the best situation would have been to send Kolosov down and just have Fedotov play like 40 to 30% of the games and give Urson the rest of the starts. But I guess the Flyers don't view it that way, or at least Torts doesn't view it that way. And it'll be interesting to see when actually Nick Delorier does get back, what they actually do, because now you have 3 goalies, you're gonna have to send somebody down. So either you waive Fedotov or you send Kolosov down. So I'm thinking the way they've been talking is they're probably gonna send Fedotov down, and look, I don't know if he'll be claimed. I really doubt it, but maybe you trade the guy. But like, look, I think you look with the injury to Makaniemi, like I think he's done for the season. So you need to have 3 guys. You need so we can't afford to lose one because Urson has been in and out of the lineup all season so far. So can you trade Fedotov? I don't know with the injury concern to Urson and with Makaniemi being out for the year. So I don't know. Look. Personally, like I said, I would send Kolosov down, have him play like the majority of the games for the Phantoms, and just ride Fedotov as the backup. But we'll see what they end up doing.
Jamey, your take.
See, I don't think the decision's in a rush. I know they will have to come to this decision, as Eric alluded to earlier. The one thing is that when Nick Delorier does come back, that's why they're able to have 3 goalies up right now, as Eric mentioned. 100% correct. The one thing that the Flyers can do, even when Nick Delorier is ready to come back, they can do a conditioning stint with Lehigh, being that he'd be out close to 2 weeks. But it was retroactive back to November 9th, his injury. So that gives them a little more time just to make sure that Ersson doesn't have that lower body injury doesn't reoccur. And Torts alluded to that he just wants to make sure that Samuel Ersson is 100% and ready and healthy. Honestly, I've gone back and forth, and I go back to Fedotov backing up for the rest of the season. Then I've gone to Kolosov. The one thing that leads me back, and this is why I think Torts is big on saying, yes, you're the number 2. One, they ran Samuel Ersson into the ground last year, John Tortorella. Because the backup goaltending spot was just too an influx. It wasn't a guaranteed, okay, cool, I'm going to get a nice performance. You got a Cal Peterson who had one great game, and then the next game comes out and gets blasted, for 6-7 goals, couldn't stop a beach ball. So then they send him back.
PTSD of that Penguins game from last year.
Right. And then Ivan Fedotov agreed to come over, and you're like, okay, maybe. And then 2 or 3 games, he didn't look good. Obviously, obvious reasons why he didn't. Obviously, he gets the benefit of the doubt just coming over, not being familiar, maybe not. He knows the language a little bit, but could be a lack of communication with the defenseman as well, being that, he doesn't know the entire language. Does that make sense? The language of the NHL as opposed to the KHL. So he gets the benefit of the doubt. Then you lead and you didn't have nobody. So this year, I think Torts is trying to learn from last year how he ran Samuel Ersson in the ground for a good reason. He had no other choice but to. But this year, they don't have to. They've been given the luxury with how good Alexei Kolosov has played and outperformed Ivan Fedotov. Not that Feds has been entirely bad, like Eric mentioned, because I don't think he's been horrible as of late. I think that, that game, he let up 2 softies, I'd say, but it happens from goalies from time to time. And Torts saw, what transpired and was like, okay, let's get him out of there. Sometimes this is a lackluster team in front of him too. The 5 in front aren't up to par that game. So he's like, okay, change the pace. Let's put it in the backup, maybe to fuel the guys, for a better outcome that game. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But you actually have Alexei Kolosov, who could actually win you some games and give Ersson a rest, maybe play 2 and then bench him, then play Kolosov, play 2, bench him, play 2. And they could go back and forth. So Kolosov is seeing at least 1 game a week, which is what a backup netminder really does, is see 1 game a week. Where Feds comes in, if he has a bad game, you're like, do we play Samuel Ersson 3 next week, or do we go back to Ivan Fedotov? Mm-hmm. So then that question starts up here. You can't then send him back because that sends the wrong message, and then recall Alexei Kolosov because that messes with his head. I think the best option that the Flyers have, $3.75 million cap hit for Ivan Fedotov. I can't see many takers saying, oh, yeah, that these teams have tons of cap space, for $3.75 million for a backup netminder. That's a lot. So I could see him not being claimed, being sent to Lehigh and keeping Alexei for his head, for mental purposes. Because if they send Kolosov back, which I think is the right thing to do, because I agree with Eric, I still think that he needs more seasoning. So the right thing to do would be send him back. But then if Feds plays bad, now you then recall Alexei. Mind you, he's only 22 years old. So now you're messing with the mentality of the player, and now you're messing with Fed's heads too. That's a messy situation that could be just cured by keeping Kolosov up and just making that decision on having Ivan Fedotov understand what's going on. Because Matt, like Eric also made a very good point, E2 McAnemy is out for the year. They need a goalie down in Lehigh. They lost 5 in a row, finally won last night against the Cleveland Monsters because they have to keep running the same goaltenders out there. I think that's, they're being hindered by that. So they need a goalie soon. And when Nick Delorier, when he's ready to come back, they could do a conditioning stint, which buys them a few more games and to make a decision.
You make a very good point on something, Jamey. I agree with both of you. My original take was pretty much the same as both of you. I would have liked to send Kolosov down, a 22-year-old goalie. I still think they rushed Carter Hart a few years back when they brought him up in 2018. I thought that was a little premature as well. I didn't want him anywhere near that team because that team was an absolute mess to watch the year that Dave Haxtell got fired. So when I look at that, I still think of that situation as, should you have brought Carter Hart up that early? Are you doing the same thing now with Kolosov? I personally believe they should have kept him down. But you make an excellent point on Jamey that I didn't even consider. Do you really, whatever decision you make when it comes to this, needs to be the decision that you stick with for the entirety of the year. Because if you play musical chairs with these goaltenders, if one of them starts to struggle and the other plays well, you're going to start messing with their heads and saying, okay, now Alexa, you come up, Fedotov, you go back down, and so on and so forth, that the situation hits itself again. Fedotov had a terrible start to the year. We all know that. Those first couple games on that West Coast road trip, he was bad. I feel like since then, he has been much better. Has he been sensational by any means of the word? No. Has he been a goalie that you feel like you can rely on as at least a consistent backup goalie for the year? Who will probably sometimes throw in a stinker, yeah. But is a guy more times than not you can look at least give you a chance to win? I think so. I didn't want Kolosov rushed because of the PTSD I had with Carter Hart and how bit of a process it was with him. Because if you remember, Carter Hart, they had that 1 year we had like an 870-something save percentage, and that made me really come into the situation of why did they bring him up in 2018-19 and not let him marinate some more? Kolosov, he's already had some issues here before you even got him to play a single game. It was pulling teeth to get this guy to be here to begin the year to begin with. You almost had another Cutter Gauthier situation with bringing him here, thinking that you may have just lost another prospect. Now, thankfully, it all worked out. And I wonder if that puts this into perspective that maybe the team's like, I don't want to mess with this guy's head anymore because there's already a mess to get him here. We should just keep him here, that we know that he's already in a good level. But at the same time, you look at it, it's like you could have looked at this as like, hey, listen, Alexei, you're here next year full-time no matter what. We're not going over after anyone else. We believe in you long-term, but we want you to marinate more. We want you to work on some of these kinks of your game. Now, obviously, Tortorella doesn't agree with that. He's obviously made a decision to make him the number 2. And after the last game against Detroit, so far, it looks like it was the right decision. He was excellent in that game, and he's been pretty good for the most part. As you mentioned earlier in the show, Jamey, we haven't had a goalie that can go post to post like that since Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, I look at the situation. Is this going to be the right move long-term? I think it will, but at the same time, I still have my doubts because I think a guy like Fedotov, who you worked your ass off to get over here too, especially last year in the midst of a playoff run when you threw him into a freaking tire fire, that you look at the situation and say, do we at least owe it to this guy to give him at least the full year here as the backup because he's older, he's more experienced, he's seen more, his game has probably developed more. Obviously, he doesn't have a higher ceiling than Kolosov, which is why I say I wish they played the long game with this, as you guys mentioned, to give him that chance to marinate a little more. But at the same time, with Fedotov, you can look at it as say, okay, we give this guy the year and see what happens. Maybe if he builds up enough value, maybe you could get something from him at the deadline. Maybe, and then bring Kolosov up once he even marinates for another couple months down in the AHL and gets his game going. Who knows? As you mentioned, too, down in the AHL, they're in a tough goalie situation. And they need someone down there. So maybe Kolosov could have been the guy for that time being. Now we're at the point, it looks like it's going to be Fedotov that goes down there. But at the end of the day, I still wish they kept Fedotov to be the number 2, at least for the time being, just because of his age, where he is in his development, how much you work to get him over just as much as Kolosov. And then maybe you could have got something for him at the deadline for a team that's desperate for a goalie like a Colorado or an Edmonton or something like that. There are teams out there, especially Edmonton right now. Colorado just got Blackwood, so maybe not them as much anymore. But in Edmonton, they could use a goalie. So, I don't know. I get it. I hope it works out, and maybe it will work out. Kolosov has been good the last couple games, but I still feel like the best move long term would have been just sending him down to the AHL just to marinate that one more year before making the move that you did. Anyone else have anything to add before we move on?
No.
No, well, it's just again with Fedotov, like the only thing I could see, like if they're really hell bent on keeping Kolosov here as the backup goalie, then like you were saying, maybe like we should explore a trade for the guy. Like even if you do trade him, you gotta have a goalie coming back.
Yeah,
so maybe like
agreed.
have identify a team that maybe wants an upgrade at their backup position, and maybe do like a little swap so that we have somebody that we could send down to the Phantoms to be the starter there. Because like look, like Jamey said, look, they're struggling right now, and we all know what Cal Peterson can do. So I don't know like if he's really the answer down there. So, and even just because like look, like you said, we did all we could to bring this guy over here. Like he clearly wants to play in the NHL. So
Oh yeah.
if he's not gonna have the opportunity to do it here, at least maybe, and you identify as Kolosov as your backup goalie, then at least give him the chance to do it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, I look at a team like Colorado, as I just mentioned too. I wonder maybe a goalie exchange with a guy like Georgiev. Like his contract set to expire this year anyway, and it looks like his future in Colorado is non-existent now.
He's in San Jose now.
Oh yeah, that's right. He got traded. That's right. He was part of the San Jose trade. My apologies.
Because also I heard this on a pod a while back, is because like the Flyers, like last year, the Flyers were apparently scared to put Sanchum on waivers because of teams like Colorado and Tampa Bay that were having goalie issues. But then as soon as they solved their issues, then they sent Sanchum down.
Yeah.
And same thing with Colorado this year. Like, look, they did a complete goalie swap. They traded their first and their backup goalie. So now they have two completely new goalies. So now maybe that like I can't really identify another team that's really looking to upgrade anything else at the moment. So maybe that's the only reason why I think if they do waive Fedotov, it would be now because Colorado will solve their problems.
Can I give an opinion?
Absolutely.
With what happens if Verson gets hurt in, like if he's not fully, because even if like he comes up healthy, he's looking good, he could go down again. Then what do you guys do if you've gotten rid of Fedotov?
It's interesting. It's interesting, Rick. That's exactly what I said the other day. We could go back to Brian Elliott. Do people remember the first year with Brian Elliott? He was phenomenal. He was a really good backup. Second year, not so much because he had that minor core surgery. There's two big things for goaltenders: their core and their groins. Like a groin is a major, major part to any goaltender. A core is major part to any goaltender as well, even more so than other players. But these are nagging injuries, groin injuries. They can reoccur at just off its spot. Carter Hart's been bit by them, in the past and has been out a month, and then really it's hindered him. That's why I wouldn't, me in particular, at least Eric gave a viable option. Hey, trade a goalie, and Alex alluded to that too. Trade a goalie for a goalie. That makes a lot of sense because if you're getting a goalie back, that makes a ton of sense to do that. But if I'm not getting a goalie back in those trades, I'm done. Ivan Fedotov is off the table, in my opinion, because we've seen in the past the Flyers, they've been bit by that goalie bug. The 8 goaltenders that one year, and then they had to get Mike McKenna, to come in and sort of save the day for a little bit there. But I just, that's something. Like Alex says, always be drafting goalies. The Flyers should always be keeping goalies.
Yeah, but listen, if you trade them for somebody else, but are you getting back the same quality? You're more likely not. That's the problem.
Eric and Alex were right. Eric and Alex were right by that, Rick, because they're saying get a goalie that you could just ship down to Lehigh.
Yeah.
So no, you may not be getting the same quality, but at least you've honored and said, Alexei, you're the guy moving forward. You're giving him more of a status there, saying, yes, we believe in you. You are our backup. This is how. This is why. The more that you keep feds around, Alexei's head is getting, am I the guy or am I not? Because it seems like they may not trust me. True. Whereas they could solve that right now by moving feds and getting that goaltender back in return. You're not trying to get the same goaltender in return. You're trying to get a guy that you could ship immediately to the AHL. So that would have been like sort of like a Cal Peterson, like he's in the AHL right now. Maybe not him, but like somebody else, like would have been like Zach Fucale that you could just ship back. Yeah, Primo.
Brian Campbell. No, not Brian Campbell. Sorry.
You can have Primo.
No,
Have him.
I'll take him. Damn right. I'll take him.
I'll decline. I don't.
I won't. Dude, I won't. Man, Keith Primo will be out all the games. Maybe that would help him. Hayden's got a ton of talent. We'll unlock it here in Philly. Trust me.
He needs a change of scenery.
Yeah,
good. We'll give him a change, baby. We'll trade you straight up. Ivan Fedotov for Caden.
There you go. Anyway, sticky situation for you guys. I just thought I'd throw my 2 cents.
Yeah, that for sure. But anyway, let's move on to our next and final topic before we go over next week's games. So we've been pretty consistent this year talking about how we don't think this team's quite really going to make a playoff push. Over the last few weeks, since their 1-5-1 start, the Flyers are 13-8-3. They fought their way back into position to battle for a playoff spot. They're currently, points-wise, tied for the final spot with the Ottawa Senators. Sens have the second wild card because of games played and regulation wins. Flyers are not going to win any tiebreakers this year because of that, because they've won so many games in overtime. But that being said, there was an episode, me and Eric kind of had a little percentage chance that we gave them for the playoffs. I think Eric had them at 10. I was a little bit higher at like 15 or 20. Have you guys changed your percent chance this team can make the playoffs? And do you think there's a real path that this team could get in this year? I'll start this one. I've gone up. I have. I think the consistency they've got in net has been big. And, having this goaltending situation, as we just talked about, has really helped benefited them in terms of having some stability in net. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the last guy. But again, that was our prior topic. They're getting a lot more. Michkov has pretty much adapted to the American game like that. He's almost a point per game guy. He was a point per game guy 2 games ago. Konechny looks like he's on pace for about 90 points this year. This is a team, I think, that you look at. They're going to need some center help still. They need more down the middle. But I've gone up. I think I put them at about a 30 to 35% chance to make the playoffs. I do think a few things would have to tweak their way. But I think there's a real path for this team to get in. But it's going to they're going to need to probably win out of the remaining 51 games, I think at least 31 of them. Eric, let me leave you off with next.
Well, look, from what I said, maybe they had a 10% chance. I'll put that a little higher now. I'll go maybe 25. Because look, I'm looking at the standings right now, and so far Tampa and Ottawa have the 2 last wildcard spots. And even though we're tied in points with Ottawa, we actually have a less of a points percentage than they do. And technically, the Rangers, who are behind us, have a better points percentage than we do. They got 2 games in hand on us, the Rangers. So, I'm looking at, look, Ottawa's in a position right now. The Rangers are in free fall. I don't know what the hell's going on with them. So, I don't know. But they have the talent to turn it around, the Rangers do. So, that's a team that could easily catch us. And who knows, Buffalo's a team that was expected to take a step this year. They're terrible. They're 1-6-3 in their last 10, which is incredibly terrible. I didn't even realize that until now. And then you look at look, Columbus has kind of a chance. We saw them play. They're actually a half decent team. Pittsburgh's on a bit of a run lately. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 also. But I think that's just fool's gold. If they think that they can actually make the playoffs, I really don't see it for them. And that would honestly be the best thing I would just make me so happy that they even just try and make the playoffs and end up out of a top 10 pick. So that would be fucking great. So look, do we have a chance? Yeah, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I'm not saying we won't. I think we could. And at the end of the day, look, it comes down to what happens in the next couple months trade-wise, right? Because the Rangers can make a trade. Ottawa can make a trade to make their teams a little stronger. And look, we can maybe be selling off Ristolainen. We can maybe be selling off I don't see it happening, but maybe a Lawton or maybe a Noah Cates or something that makes our team a little weaker. So I think it all depends on the moves that are going to be made in the next couple months. But if I had to, like I said, if I have to give them a percentage, I would say maybe 25%.
Jamey, floor is yours.
Usually I'm pretty positive on this aspect. Not saying I'm not positive, but I would give them a 20% shot. And the reason I give them a 20 is just their offense is too inconsistent for me to say, yes, they should, surpass the New York Rangers or surpass, the Ottawa Senators or surpass, a veteran, Tampa Bay team that just knows how to win. I think that the Rangers are going to find their groove here eventually. They've been in this free fall. But, to their credit, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And usually the teams that finish well usually propel themselves, farther in the playoffs there. So, yeah, the Flyers started off bad. And look, now they're sort of flourishing, here a little bit. They got their game together. But to me, it's just not enough. And I like I said, they need them. And that's why I think Danny's been on the phones a lot here, as of late, trying to find a player. It's because they know that Michkov, can't be the only guy, that they need more, that they need that one more player at the very least to get them over the hump there, at least give them a shot. But if their offense was like last year to where it was more complete, I would say yes. I actually felt better with their offense last year, but there's players this year that are sort of underperforming in my eyes a little too much. Like, I love Joel Farabee. I think he's going to get his game together. But he has, taken a little bit low, offensively. Bobby Brink has gone in stretches here offensively. And I know why, because he's become an excellent checker along the boards. I think Torts is trying to get him to do more, and it's messing with his head maybe a little bit offensively here. Maybe he's paying attention, honing in on one more area as opposed to offense. He's come, in influx. Tyson Forrester has been in influx. Owen Tippett was hot there for a minute, and now he's cooled off. Michkov, who's been, I didn't expect very much from Michkov. I gave him a 40%, 47-point plateau there to start the year. Has done better and overexceeded my expectations, at least early. Travis Konechny has done so well. But aside from Travis and aside from Mafi, who has been that consistent offensive player, it's been hit and miss. Each game, you just don't know. Even like against Detroit, yeah, Cam Talbot had a great game, but it's 2-1. Those two goals that were scored late were two empty net goals by Scotty. Not taking anything away from him. I don't want to do that. But what I'm saying is that when it comes down to crunch time, you're going to need that 3-goal play. You're going to need to win those games 2-1. I don't know if they have enough offense to propel them when the games start to get tighter, where the ice gets shorter, yet. I still think they're learning. Unless they become more consistent offensively, I just don't see it. I think that there's been a little bit of a goaltending carousel, and that's mainly due to Sam Erson's, unfortunate health. If he gets hurt, now the reins go to Alexei Kolosov and Ivan Fedotov again. There's just too much in influx, I think. They're getting great goaltending right now, from Erson and from Alexei, and Feds hasn't played too bad. But I just don't know if it's enough.
You make some fair points there, Jamey. And the underachievement of some of the big guns have been definitely noticeable. One guy that hasn't been mentioned that I think we need to talk about, too, who we thought would take a step forward this year, Tyson Forster. He had a 20-point campaign as a rookie last year, 20-goal campaign, 33 points as a rookie. And he had some streaky moments. And then this year, he's kind of settled in. He hasn't taken that next step we hoped he'd take. Joel Farabee, man, I love the kid. I want to see him succeed so bad. Former BU graduate. Kid's awesome. But he's got to show me something sooner rather than later. You can't keep getting he's playing well, but how long can you go where you're just missing before you get something to go your way? I think Owen Tippett is starting to find his game again. He's up to 8 goals.
Yeah.
I do expect more from him. When you have back-to-back seasons of 27 and 28 goals, I figured maybe this year you maybe crack 30. He's going to have to really find his game to do that this year. We'll see. Bobby Brink was playing very well, but the last couple of games, I feel like he has taken a step back a little bit. I'd like to see him off the first power play unit. No disrespect to the guy, and put Owen Tippett back there. I feel like there's been a lot of plays that have ended on his stick with that first unit. I would prefer Tippett to be there now that he's starting to find his game again. They're going to need more from the power play, for sure. Time for 26 in the league, which is what they were going into yesterday, is not going to cut it. It's just not. They didn't score again on the power. I think they had 2 power plays yesterday and didn't score on either. Their PK isn't as good as it was last year, especially with how aggressive they were last year compared to this year. I'm not saying I need their PK to be elite, but it needs to be better. Or it needs to be good, stay consistently good. And I need some of these guys who are underperforming, like the Forsters of the world, like the Farabees of the world, like the Frosts of the world, to really step up. Konechny, Mitchkov, maybe to a lesser degree. I think Couturier is starting to find his game again. He's been much better than he was in the second half of last year. So I maybe if he can provide anything offensively, that would be massive. But they need more. Yeah, for sure. But they need more from some of their secondary guys. They really do. Because Konechny, Mitchkov, and from a defensive aspect, Couturier can't do it all. They need more. Tippett's finding his game a little bit. I need him to stay finding his game and not go missing again and go on a spurt where he has 1 goal in 14 games or some shit like that. But they need a level of consistency. I will say this. I looked at the schedule before today. If they can hang around and be in this to the end, their final 9 games as it stands are all against teams not in the playoffs at the moment, which is interesting. Now, mind you, they had a spurt like this last year, and they completely defecated all over themselves on that 8-game losing streak and ended up being the difference between them making the playoffs. So that doesn't mean it's an automatic win. But their schedule in their final 9 games is very, very lenient. There are they could get on a run if they hang in this thing long enough. Now, obviously, that's the battle, is hanging in this thing. They've got, after this week, they got a 6-game road trip coming up where they're leaving, they're doing the usual New Year's West Coast road trip, coming back. After what, I think December 21st is their last home game. They're not home again after that until January 7th. So 2.5 weeks they're not going to be at home. That six-game road trip starting in Pittsburgh is going to be big. They're going to need to really show something there. They're at Pittsburgh, and they got 4 out west against California teams, and then Vegas, and they come back east to play against Toronto before they're home again. They got a 7-game homestand in March, which will be huge too. During these type of long spans where you're at home or on the road, you need to show levels of consistency. That's big things there that stand out to me. If they can hang around, maybe add a player, I could bump that higher, but I think 30 to 35% is where I have them at the moment. I think we're all fair in our numbers. I'm probably the most optimistic, but I still need to see more before I go over the 50% plateau. I only mentioned this today because I looked at Money Puck, and I put this on my Twitter account, and this post blew up. Going into yesterday, I thought this was way too high before I say this number. Money Puck had them with a 71% chance of making the playoffs. I looked at that and I'm like, what? Where did this come from? I get they were the wild card too going into it, but that number just seemed way blown out.
Way too high, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad we had some realistic talk. I just wanted to see what everyone's opinion was. After seeing that, I was like, I can't be the only one who thinks that number is way blown overboard. I don't know what it is today after what it was yesterday. Actually, I'll tell you right now. Money Puck now dropped them all the way down to 49%. So that shows their consistency in the model. But yeah, even that I still believe is high. But we'll see. This will be something interesting to revisit throughout the year if they can hang on this bubble and where we see things. But does anyone have anything else before we finally end things with our predictions of the week?
I'm good.
Good.
All right.
I think we all did pretty well.
3 games this week. Home against Detroit on Wednesday. They got a little bit of a break. At Detroit. I got them mixed up. At Detroit on Wednesday. TNT game, so nationally televised. Home against the Kings. And then I believe it's home against Columbus, which is their final home game of the calendar year. Jamey, let me start with you. Give me a prediction for the week.
2-1. I think they win. I think they lose Wednesday at Little Caesar Arena for whatever reason, man. I don't know. The Flyers just, if I remember correctly, I just don't think they play well at Little Caesars Arena. I think they beat the Kings and beat Columbus.
Eric.
I think I'm gonna be a little more pessimistic on this one. I think they beat Detroit because I don't think Detroit's a good team at all, and I don't know if Cam Talbot's gonna pull another miracle game, but we'll see. So I think they beat Detroit. LA is really hot of late, and they're a really good team. So I think we lose to LA. And Columbus, I think we actually lose to Columbus. Because again, Columbus always plays us hard, and even look, that game that we won, like we said, like Detroit, Columbus just didn't look good that game. Like I said, they were coming off a West Coast trip, so I think we lose that game. So I think it's going to be a 1-2, maybe 1-1. Maybe they go to overtime with Columbus, but I think it's going to be most probably 1-2 this week.
I think I'm almost in agreement with Jamey. I think they lose to Detroit. I don't know why, but it just feels like whenever you have a game against a team that you should win, that you come off a little bit of a break with, it ends up being weird and they don't perform up to what they should be. It kind of feels like that Utah game. I'm going to say they lose to Detroit 4-3. It's going to be a nail biter that they were down more than the score indicates, but they make it close late and they can't quite finish the comeback. I think they shock us and beat the Kings in a shootout. I'm going to say they win that one 6-5.
Dang, that's awesome.
Shootout. And then the Columbus game, I'll keep it nice and simple. I'll say they win that one 3-1. Those are my predictions.
There you go.
All right. But with that being said, does anyone else have anything to state before we wrap things up here?
No, just thank you for your support, fans. You guys are amazing. You men and women are awesome, and happy holidays all.
And same here as well. Thank you all for tuning in for another installment of Flyer Gonna Flyer. We always appreciate having you guys on. Another great episode. Love having these two guys to talk hockey with. I wouldn't ask for anyone else to talk it with. But that all being said, thank you all for tuning in. Happy holidays, everyone. We got one more episode before we go into Christmas time, or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Happy holidays, everyone, and let's go Flyers.